If you're thinking about getting an in-ground pool in Virginia in 2026, you're probably wondering about how much is this going to cost. In this video today, we're going to help you understand the answer to that question and all the different variables that you might need to consider as you're thinking about getting an in-ground pool. In this video, we're going to cover price ranges by pool type for fiberglass, concrete, vinyl liner pools. We're going to talk about the things that might cause the cost to go up, some things that you might be able to do to drive the cost down. We're also going to share some watch outs for you, some things that you might need to know along the way to help you see around those blind corners so that you can make a very informed decision. So let's get started. All right, let's start with different types of pools and how much you might expect to spend for each type. So there's fiberglass pools, there's vinyl liner pools, and there's concrete pools. 3 different types of pools, and each one has a slightly different upfront cost that you would expect to spend. So if you'd like a price moving forward, wherever you might live within our service area, these prices are going to be roughly about the range that you can expect to spend. So let's start with fiberglass pools. That's what we specialize in. Fiberglass pools are great because they last a long time, they've got a great warranty, and you don't have to do a lot of lifetime maintenance on them. Price range is going to depend on a lot of different factors that we're going to talk about later on in this video, but ballpark, you could probably expect to spend all in probably between about $85,000 and $140,000. Then there's vinyl liner pools. Vinyl liner pools usually have a lower upfront cost because the liner itself is less expensive. The price range for those pools might be in the $65,000 to $85,000 or $90,000 range, but you have to keep in mind that you'll be replacing that liner about every 5 to 10 years. Then there's concrete pools. Concrete pools are also called gunite pools, plaster pools, shotcrete pools. These are all different terms that are used to describe concrete pools. They are typically the highest on the price range, especially here in Virginia. You might expect to spend somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 on concrete pools. And that's just a general sense of the price ranges that you might expect to spend for the different types of pools. So one thing to keep in mind when you're really just trying to figure out what type of pool might be right for you, one of the things that we found that helps is to consider the upfront cost versus the lifetime cost of ownership, which is really a big factor for a lot of the people that we talk to. So for example, a vinyl liner pool might cost less on the front end, but you're going to need to plan to spend between $5,000 and $8,000 on a liner replacement about every 5 to 10 years. With a concrete pool, they're great, but you're going to have to plan on replastering those pools about every 10 to 20 years, and that might cost as much as $15,000 to $25,000. With a fiberglass pool, you've got the upfront cost, but there's not really a large cost of ownership for the shell itself. You're not going to need to plan to refinish the inside of the pool. There's not a lot of things that you're going to have to do from a maintenance standpoint in terms of maintaining the pool shell itself, so long as you take care of it and so long as it's installed the right way. So that's a general overview of the different pool types and what you could expect to spend on them. Let's go into some things that could cause the cost of your in-ground pool to go up. And let's break these into 2 different categories. One category is the things that are within your control, and the other are the things that are really outside of your control. Let's start with the things that you can control. Number 1, the size of your pool and your patio. That's probably the single biggest factor because the bigger the pool, the more expensive it's going to be. The more patio materials you have, the more expensive it's going to be because you're going to pay per square foot. Another factor might be the scope of the overall project, like whether or not you want to add a pool house or a pergola or other types of structures or hot tubs. So the scope is a big factor. Another big factor would be the materials that you choose. So you might have a designated amount of patio space, but the type of patio material can swing the price from 30 to 40%. So something like concrete would probably be on the lower end of that range. Something like natural stone would probably be on the higher end of that range. Then there's different options and accessories that are available. One of the bigger options that could impact your price would be an automatic pool cover. So that might range somewhere between $18,000 and $22,000. Then there's things like heaters, pool lights, and other water features and items like that can swing your price $20,000 either way. And we really need to think about that in terms of like things that you can add now and things you can add later. So let's talk about things you can do to keep the cost down for your in-ground pool project. And the single biggest thing is you need to start with really what are your priorities. If it's to get a pool in your backyard with a little bit of patio, that will keep that scope very narrow and will keep the price of the project much, much lower. If you want to go all out and do a patio, do a pool house, do the hot tub, do the tanning ledge, do all these things on the front end, that's going to drive your initial cost way up. So that's when we start to get up more towards that $120,000, $140,000, $150,000 range versus maybe towards the lower end of that range, which could be in the 90s and the low $100,000 range. So one way to work around this is to think about what we call phased construction, which is where you can do this project in phases in your backyard, where you can start with the pool, maybe a little bit of patio, then the next year or two you can add more patio, you can add a structure, you can add the hot tub, you can add these other things. So you really need to think about the things you can do now, and you have to do now, versus the things that you can add later. And if you're able to break that down, your pool builder may help you to create that roadmap to help you get where you want to get with a lower initial price today. All right, so let's talk about the things that are outside of your control. These are things that you can't really do anything about, but you really need to be aware of as you're getting your pool priced in 2026. The first thing is the slope of your backyard. Why is that number one? It's because retaining walls can be very expensive. So you might live somewhere up in Northern Virginia or Central Virginia or out west towards Charlottesville, where there might be a lot of different grade variations in your backyard, which might require some different site work or retaining walls. And a retaining wall can be somewhere between, on the super low end, like $5,000, or it could be as much as $50,000. But if you have a slope in your backyard that you can see, you're probably going to need to plan to spend somewhere between $10,000 and $30,000 minimum. So it's really important that you have that number up front. Another thing that's outside of your control is the permits and regulations that are required by your locality. And some localities require special engineering and different things like that. So that could swing your price by as much as $5,000 to $15,000 or even $25,000 depending on what's needed. So for example, up in Northern Virginia, there's some counties like Fairfax that might require what's called a grading plan. If you go over a certain square footage, that comes with a very high cost. We could potentially help you work around that, but these are things that you really need to be aware of going into your pool project. The third thing is the accessibility to your backyard. So we need to get back there to install a swimming pool. We've got a lot of materials that need to go out, like dirt. We've got materials that need to come to the backyard, like the swimming pool, stone for the backfill around the outside, concrete for your patio and for your coping areas. So how we get in and out can affect the price, because a crane might be needed. We might need specialized equipment. We might have to haul most of the dirt away. So the accessibility and the size of your backyard is another factor. One really important thing here is that when you go through this process with different contractors, it's important that you ask these questions so that you see these prices on the front end so you don't get surprised. So let's talk about what we might call hidden costs for a second. Now these might not be things that a pool contractor intentionally hides, although that can happen, but there's certainly things that you're going to need to make sure that you understand what it costs, because one of the most difficult things that we've learned over the many years doing this as we talk to people who are considering buying a pool is that it's incredibly difficult to compare apples to apples from pool builder to pool builder. And a lot of times people might get a price for a total package and then get another price and they think they're comparing apples to apples, but when you dive in, they actually realize that they're not. So you need to understand what questions you need to ask so that you can clarify that and understand exactly what you're getting from the different bids or estimates that you might get. And another thing you need to consider are items that you may expect that are completely going to be in your base package, like water to fill the pool, delivery of the pool shell to your site. You want to make sure that all these things are covered. We've actually seen instances where these are actually not included and they're expected to be covered in change orders after the project has already begun. It depends on the builder, it depends on the type of pool. Sometimes that cost might not be disclosed on the front end. So in other words, you might go ahead and sign a contract, you start the pool project, the next thing you know, you get surprised with a change order that you were not planning for. So let's say you have a sloped backyard. You might know that you need some retaining wall. You might talk to a pool builder and he might say something like, look, you have a slope in your backyard. Let's just go ahead and get the pool in and let's figure out what the wall is going to cost after we get the pool in. That should be a red flag. You probably don't want to go into this project with those big open-ended budget questions like that. What you really want to do is you need to understand on the front end exactly how much retaining wall is needed, how many square face feet, how tall the wall is going to be, and exactly know exactly what that's going to cost you. So another item would be the dirt hauling, or hauling the dirt off your site, and that would come from the excavation. So they dig the hole, they have to do something with the dirt. If it can't stay on your site, it's got to be hauled somewhere. A pool contractor might include all the dirt hauling in the contract, they might include none of the dirt hauling in the contract, or they might have an allotment that's included, and then there might be some overage that you get hit with after the project starts. It depends. But you need to know the answer to that question, because that could make a $2,000 to $8,000 swing in your overall budget depending on where you live. Another area might be the electrical work. Sometimes you might have electrical work included in the contract, but it might not include the total scope of all the work that needs to happen. For example, you might have an electrical allowance that's in your contract, and any overage you might be responsible to pay a change order for. Or it might be that you're responsible as the homeowner to run electricity to the location of the pump and filter system. And then the pool builder's scope is to take and wire that equipment on the site once that electricity is there. So you need to understand that going in and make sure you have that entire scope covered. Gas lines are needed if you have a gas heater, gas, natural gas, or propane heater. There will need to be a gas line run to that heater that will be located at your pump and filter system. So there's a cost associated with that. Some builders will include that and some will not. Additional patio is also an area where we find that people can be surprised. So what that might look like is you might have the pool installed, you might have the coping border perimeter right around the pool included in the contract, and you might go into the project with an open-ended question, kind of not having clarity around how much patio you're going to get or how much it's going to cost. And we certainly found over the years that people will be surprised with a $10, $20, or even $30,000 change order for their additional patio area when they were not expecting that at all. In fact, they were probably expecting it to be maybe $5,000, and then all of a sudden they are stuck with a change order that's a lot more than that. The permitting process itself is another factor just in the cost of the permit, and you need to understand whether the pool installer is going to ask you to get the permit, which we wouldn't recommend, or whether they will get the permit, and then whether you're going to be responsible for those fees or whether it's going to be included in your contract amount. There's also engineering costs that may or may not be associated with the permitting process and what it takes to get the permit approved through your locality. Some counties or cities require extensive engineering to the tune of $2,000 to $8,000 in engineering costs just to get that permit through their process. So that's something that you need to be familiar with as well, depending on your locality. We find that to be the case a lot more up towards Stafford County, Spotsylvania County, up into Northern Virginia, Fairfax, Prince William County. These are all counties that typically require extensive engineering. And finally, you might assume that you get a pool cover with your pool, like a security cover that might anchor down to the patio, or there's different types of covers that you might get. A lot of folks will assume that that's in their package when it may or may not be in the package. Again, go through, create your spreadsheet, create your list, make sure you have all these things covered, and then if you do choose to go get multiple bids, make sure you're able to compare apples to apples. We're happy to be a resource for you, even if you don't buy a pool from us. If you get a quote from us and you're getting other quotes from other people, we are happy to just help you evaluate those without knowing who else you're talking to, and we can just help you understand if what you're comparing in reality is really apples to apples. So let's talk about the different areas around the state of Virginia. You might be wondering, is where I live going to impact the price of my in-ground pool? Well, we did some research across all of the different regions that we service, and we're going to give you the averages of what our average customers have invested from last year, 2025. This might give you a good idea of what it might cost you in 2026. Let's start with Central Virginia. Our average customer invested about $130,000 in 2025. That would include Henrico County, Hanover County, Goochland, Powhatan. These areas are right around Central Virginia, spent an average of about $130,000. In the Tidewater area, this would include Williamsburg, Hampton, Newport News, on down into Suffolk, Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, spent an average of about $157,000. We found that customers in these areas would invest a little bit more in the outdoor living space, especially on the front end, and opt not to go with phase construction, so that's the reason for the higher average there. In the Fredericksburg area, this would be Stafford County, Spotsylvania County, spent an average of about $121,000. Because of some regulations there, we found that customers there do tend to do more phase construction, so they get the pool and the patio in, then maybe add something else down the road. In Northern Virginia, average was about $117,000 in 2025. These are usually smaller yards, smaller pools, smaller patios, and certainly a lot of folks in that area like to get the pool in and then come back later and add more outdoor living space after the fact. Then there's the Northern Neck, Middle Peninsula area, spent an average of about $110,000 in their backyard with us in 2025. This would be including Lancaster County, Northumberland County, Gloucester, Matthews, Middlesex counties, King George. And so that's an idea, just as a general sense, of how much folks spent in their backyard from area to area. We've covered a lot of content around how much in-ground pools cost in Virginia in 2026. And you might be asking yourself right now, is it really worth it. Well, we understand that this is a huge investment for you. Right now, it's easy to get wrapped up in how soon it could be installed, how much the initial cost is. We get it, it's a lot of money. We found that people that think 3+ years out tend to make the best decisions. So pause for a second and think about how you might feel about your pool in 3 years. Are you happy with the pool builder you used? Are you happy with the way it looks, with the way your family uses it, with the way it's holding up? We find that people who really lean into that make better decisions and ultimately end up happier in the end. We take this very seriously, so no matter what, find a pool builder that you feel like you can trust. That's probably going to be the most important aspect of this decision. You might have an opportunity to speak to multiple pool builders, but that is critical. So if you think you'd like to find out how much a pool might cost in your backyard, please give us a call, fill out our online pricing calculator, or you can come to our beautiful pool park here in Warsaw, Virginia. We're always here to help you through this pricing process, and we'd love to have a conversation with you. Thanks for joining us today, and good luck on your pool journey.